Hello everyone. I'm Nat. Welcome to the last video in our character archetypes series. So exciting. If you haven't seen the first 3 videos in this series yet, they are right here. I would strongly recommend watching those first because they lay a really good foundation for what we are talking about in today's video, which is the second half, the last 6 of Carl Jung's character archetypes, how they show up in real stories and real characters, including their shadow side. In the intro to part 1 of this video, I talked about the rules of writing a shadow archetype. For anyone who hasn't seen that, I am going to include that clip after the intro, and then we'll dive into the archetypes. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. Really quick, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. I love hearing from you guys. It gives me motivation to keep making these videos. Also, my website, my Instagram, and my email list are linked in the description below. So look there if you're interested in more writing advice, some extra writing content, and then exclusive updates on all of my projects. Okay, so before we dive into examples of each archetype and shadow archetype, I want to explain the rules of writing a shadow archetype. There aren't really any rules in writing, but these are just guidelines for when you are turning an archetype upside down to write a shadow character. So in every archetype, the good side will have good and bad traits. For example, every good rebel character will have the strong traits of being individualist, taking risks, and leading, but they will also all struggle with rebelliousness, carelessness, and impulsivity. When you are writing a shadow character, though, the good traits change. They turn on their head, and they become the opposite of what they would be in a protagonist. So, for an honest character, their shadow side would be dishonest. And this can be a little bit confusing sometimes because it leads to the shadow archetypes looking so drastically different from the original archetypes, but when you actually break it down and take a close look at it, it starts to get easier. So, for each archetype, we'll go through the traits that they typically have, as well as what in their past made them this way, and what their character arc looks like in their stories. Oh, and by the way, there's spoilers for every single character on this list, I think. So, if I say a name that you don't want to hear spoilers for, don't keep watching. Okay, I had to split the filming of this video into 2 parts because it's just so much to cover. So now, it's a new day, and let's talk about the lover. The lover wants close relationships and they fear loneliness and isolation. Because of this, they're kind, passionate, and they will sacrifice for those that they love. But they can also be obsessive, jealous, and lack their own identity. I think a great character for this archetype is Anna from Frozen, and here's why. 1. Anna is kind. Anna always treats others kindly, and a good example of this is when she and Kristoff meet Olaf.
I'm gonna tell him.
Don't you dare.
2. She's passionate. Anna's passion is most obvious when she's with Hans. She falls for him so fast, she agrees to marry him the day that they meet. 3. She's willing to sacrifice for others. We'll talk about this more when we go over Anna's character arc, but she essentially sacrifices her own life at the end of the movie to save her sister. It doesn't get any more altruistic than that. However, she also falls into the negative traits of the lover. 1. She can be obsessive. This comes along with her passion. She obsesses over Hans in the beginning. She wants to marry him after just a few hours of knowing him. 2. She's a little bit jealous. The lover's jealousy shows up a little bit less in Anna, but there's a tiny bit of it when Hans is telling her about his family and how he grew up. He mentions his family is big, and we can see very clearly how much Anna wishes she had that. 3. She lacks her own identity. Anna's entire identity is based on her relationships with other people. That's why she can't stand to be alone. She goes so far out of her way to save her sister because that's her sister. Part of her identity is being Elsa's sister, and she still wants a relationship with Elsa. Part of it also has to do with feeling unloved. The lover feels worthless in the wake of loneliness and disconnection, so they seek relationships to restore that feeling of being loved, which restores their sense of self-worth. And you can totally see Anna doing this throughout the movie. I know we all know what happened to Anna in her past to make her this way, but let's go over it anyway. Anna grew up isolated. Her entire life, she's been alone. She always craved connection with her sister Elsa, but Elsa was always too afraid to let Anna get close to her because she didn't want to hurt her. It makes sense that a life spent alone and separated from the only other person in her family turned Anna into someone who fears isolation and loneliness and wants nothing more than meaningful connection.
Elsa and I were really close when we were little, but then one day she just shut me out, and I never knew why.
I would never shut you out.
As Anna goes through her journey, she learns from Kristoff that it's not so bad to be alone, and she starts to realize how strong and capable she is even in the face of isolation. She turns her attention from getting love and connection to loving and protecting those around her instead, which ultimately leads her to sacrificing herself to save Elsa instead of getting the true love's kiss from Kristoff that will keep her alive. So next up is the Seducer. In place of the lover's kindness, the Seducer can be brutal and unfeeling. They don't sacrifice for those they love, they sacrifice for those they lust after. And the lover's jealousy turns to a dark kind of envy in them. My example for this is Joe Goldberg from You. A quick trigger warning for anyone who's like me, You is a show about murder. And Joe's section of this video will discuss things like physical and emotional abuse. Skip to the Jester in the seek bar down here if you don't want to hear about stuff like that. And I apologize to all the You fans who would love me to go into so much detail about Joe, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, here's how Joe fits the Seducer. 1. He's brutal. I don't really want to go into detail for this one, so I'll just say this. He's a murderer. Pretty brutal, right? He's barbaric, and he doesn't feel remorse about it. 2. He'll sacrifice for those he lusts after. While the lover really does care about and love those around them, the Seducer operates out of lust. And not just sexual lust. In a broader sense, lust means that you believe someone or something exists for you, to serve you, to please you, to be there for you. That thing is for you. Every time Joe meets a target, he begins to think of them as existing for him. And subsequently, he sacrifices things for them, like, his time, his money, his attention, his safety, and eventually his status as a good citizen who's not a murderer. 3. He's obsessive. Once Joe picks his next target, he obsesses over them constantly. He's the definition of the word. His picture should be in the dictionary. 4. He's envious. In the Seducer, the lover's jealousy turns to envy. They start to dislike and even hate the people that have what they want. In Joe, this shows up as him killing people who are too close to his target, or the people who get in the way of him getting to the target. Once he chooses someone and decides he wants all of their attention, everyone else becomes cannon fodder. And 5, he lacks his own identity. Joe loses himself in the people he chooses to pursue, even changing his identity in Season 2 to get away from his past and do his obsess over someone thing all over again. What in Joe's past made him this way? As a child, Joe grew up with an extremely abusive father. Later, in his teenage years, he grew close with a man named Mr. Mooney, who abused him in a very similar way. Essentially, he grew up learning that brutality and abuse are ways to show your love for someone. I can't discuss Joe's entire character arc because I haven't seen all of Season 2 or Season 3. But in Season 1, his arc leads to him killing everyone around his target, Guinevere Beck, and eventually killing her as well. He's so possessive that he ends up hurting the one he loves. And at the beginning of Season 2, we can actually see that he feels remorseful about this. He killed the one person he wanted, and it eats at him until he finds the next person he wants. And that brings us to the Jester, thank God. The Jester wants levity and fun, and they fear boredom and being boring. They're fun, irreverent, and upbeat, but that means they can also be irresponsible and distracting, and they often waste time. I chose one of my favorite characters ever for this one, Captain Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean. Here's why I think he's the Jester. 1. He's fun. Jack Sparrow highly values fun. One of his favorite places is the lawless island of Tortuga, which is essentially just a big party island. The people are boisterous and loud, the rules are few and far between, and the drinks are always pouring. And he brings this fun with him wherever he goes, too. 2. He's irreverent. The one scene that kept coming to mind for this one was when Jack is escaping Port Royal. It's one of my favorites.
Commodore Norrington, my effects, please. And my hat. You will always remember this as the day that you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow.
3. funny, he's upbeat. No matter what comes his way, Sparrow stays upbeat, always preferring to look on the bright side of things, or joke instead of actually dealing with things. I mean, by the time we meet him in the first movie, he's already lost so much, but he's still a fun jokester who entertains us with all of his shenanigans. And we all know he's irresponsible, distracting, and he wastes time. There are so many examples of this. Here you go.
Am I worthy to serve under Captain Jack Sparrow? Or should I just kill you now?
Time to go. Aye!
Parsnip, par, sleep, partner. Parlay? That's the one. Parlay.
Welcome to the Caribbean, love.
I just thought I'd be married by now. I'm so ready to be married.
Do something! Hey, Scungili! Got it! Come to negotiate, eh? Have you, you slimy git? Look what I got. I got a jar of dirt. I got a jar of dirt.
Why is Jack Sparrow this way? I think it's because he has a difficult life. Though he loves being a pirate, it's still a life of crime and running. He has a lot of enemies and he leaves behind a lot of disasters in his wake. And the best way he can cope is through joking and humor. I think he makes light of things that would otherwise bother him. Though Captain Jack Sparrow is a good guy, I know some of y'all might question me on that, but he's a good guy, his arc is somewhat static. We do learn more about what he cares about and why throughout the movies, but otherwise his arc isn't necessarily the traditional positive arc. That being said, he does have to suppress a lot of his more Jester-like tendencies most of the time to get stuff done and be a successful pirate. And although the Commodore might disagree,
You are without doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of.
But you have heard of me.
I think he's a successful pirate. The shadow version of the Jester is the Trickster, someone who is also irreverent, irresponsible, and distracting. The Trickster wastes time like the Jester does, but there's a major difference between them. Rather than being fun and upbeat, the Trickster usually suffers from intense depression, and there's no better example of this than the Joker. Here's why. 1, he's irreverent. The Joker laughs when he kills people. Need I say more? 2, he's depressed. Depression is a classic Joker trait. He's always been severely depressed. This is best shown in the most recent Joker movie, which I don't really want to talk about because that movie is so heavy, but it's there, and it's really well done in that movie. The Joker is a depressed character. 3, he's irresponsible. He's distracting. Not only does the Joker look distracting, but everything else about him is distracting too. He wants attention, and when he doesn't get attention, he does something chaotic. He doesn't try to be effective, he tries to be showy. 5, he wastes time. The Joker often gloats in the middle of his crimes. For example, robbing a bank. A better use of his time might be, something productive to make the bank robbery go faster, but no, he's gloating instead. The Joker's past is unclear, but in a lot of origin stories, he comes from a childhood of abuse and tragedy, and probably neglect, which would explain why he wants to get so much attention with his stunts.
You remind me of my father. I hated my father.
He channels all of his energy into his villainry, and he finds others' suffering humorous because he had to find his own suffering humorous too.
Now I see the funny side. Now I'm always smiling.
But what about his arc? I love negative arcs, you guys. Gosh. As his plans continue to fail and he's continuously thwarted, the Joker becomes more and more insane and results to bigger and more flashy methods of defeating Batman and getting attention.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
But he doesn't do this for the power of it. He does it because it's fun. Winning is fun. Watching others suffer is fun. And he is chasing fun. Next we have the Orphan, the archetype who wants to fit in with those around them because they fear exclusion and rejection. They're empathetic, understanding, and ethical, but they're also eager to please, they lack confidence, and they're dependent on others. For this archetype, I picked Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon because, 1. He's empathetic. When Hiccup comes face to face with Toothless for the first time, he can't bring himself to kill him. Instead, he sets Toothless free. 2. He's understanding. Even after learning that the dragons aren't bad, Hiccup is still understanding of the Vikings that want to kill them because he knows that's how they were all raised. He doesn't hate anyone for still hunting dragons. He just wants them to understand him too, because if they did, they would stop.
They've killed hundreds of us!
And we've killed thousands of them!
3. He's ethical. When he realizes the dragons aren't actually bad, he refuses to kill one, and he tries to get the village to stop killing them too.
Everything we know about you guys is wrong.
And of course, the negatives apply to him too. 1. He's eager to please. Hiccup wants to kill dragons because that's what everyone else does. And that's what will make his father proud of him. He strives to be good at what will make him like everybody else.
A natterhead is sure to get me at least noticed. Gronkles are tough. Taking down one of those would definitely get me a girlfriend.
2. He lacks confidence. Hiccup is smaller than the other Vikings in the village, weaker than the other Vikings in the village, and less skilled than the other Vikings in the village. He lacks confidence because he's always been told he's not good enough, whether directly or indirectly.
If you ever want to get out there to fight dragons, you need to stop all
This!
But you just pointed to all of me.
Which means you walk like us, you talk like us, you think like us. No more of this.
You just gestured to all of me.
3. He's dependent on others. As he fails in dragon training, the others around him have to pick up the slack in a lot of ways. For example, saving him from certain death at the hands, wings, claws, of dragons. And he depends on the other Vikings in the village to defend him from dragons because he can't really do it himself, even though he wants to. What in his past made him this way? Hiccup's mother died when he was young, so he was raised mainly by his very masculine, very strong father. His dad, Stoic, the chief of the tribe, is the ultimate embodiment of what a Viking should be, and Hiccup wasn't like him, so he grew up feeling like he wasn't good enough. He wasn't Viking enough. On an island of strong, tough Vikings, he wasn't strong or tough. Throughout the movie, Hiccup starts to master dragon training due to what he's learning with Toothless and the other dragons, which leads to him becoming more and more confident in himself and in his abilities. Eventually, he himself becomes the ideal. Others look up to him. They want to be like him. In the end, he manages to show the others that the dragons are actually good, and he transforms all of Berk.
Turns out all we needed was a little more of this.
You just gestured to all of me.
The shadow side of the Orphan is the follower, someone who abandons their empathy and moral code to achieve the acceptance they so desperately desire. And I feel like the Prowler from Into the Spider-Verse is a great example of this. 1. He's unfeeling and immoral. The Prowler is a feared villain, someone who carries out Kingpin's will, which means he's willing to kill people in order to avoid the rejection he most fears. As Miles' uncle, Aaron is naturally empathetic and kind, but to work with Kingpin, he has to set aside his moral code and his empathy. 2. He's eager to please. Aaron wants to do what Kingpin needs so he can continue to have the acceptance and validation he receives as a villain. Like all Orphan archetypes, Aaron fears exclusion and rejection, which he's always experiencing because of his estrangement from his brother, Miles' dad, who went into law enforcement and doesn't approve of the way Aaron lives his life.
You want to end up like your uncle?
What's wrong with Uncle Aaron? He's a good guy.
Aaron doesn't feel good enough, so he seeks acceptance somewhere else. He's eager to please Kingpin so he can keep the belonging he has as a villain. 3. He's dependent on others. Aaron depends on those outside of him to get validation and belonging. If the people around him aren't providing him with acceptance, he can't accept himself. He feels like he doesn't belong. So essentially, he depends on others for his well-being. Because if those around him aren't validating him, he's stuck in his worst fear, exclusion. Here's my theory as to what turned Aaron into the Prowler. Aaron's estrangement from his brother Jeff did a number on him. While Jeff went into law enforcement, Aaron preferred to stay on the other side of the law, and Jeff didn't approve of that. Aaron is estranged to the point that Miles has to sneak out behind Jeff's back to spend time with him. He went through the worst kind of rejection already, so now he fears it in every part of his life. Throughout the movie, Aaron ends up being outed to Miles as the Prowler, which severely damages Miles' trust in him and hurts their relationship, even though Aaron can't bring himself to harm Spider-Man once he realizes Spider-Man is Miles. As a result of his refusal to kill Miles, the Prowler is shot and dies from his wounds. Next we have the Caregiver. Guys, I'm excited for this one. I'm so excited for this one. Okay. The Caregiver wants to protect and care for everyone, and they fear being selfish or self-important. Because of this, they're nurturing, sensitive, and dependable, but they can also be self-forgetting, and because they struggle to stand up for themselves, they're often exploited. The example I have for this one is Neytiri from Avatar. Guys, I love Avatar, okay? I love Avatar so much it kills me, and I freak out whenever I talk about it, but I'm gonna try to stay calm so I can teach you. Okay, here's why Neytiri is the Caregiver. 1. She's nurturing, albeit in a tough love sort of way. Though she doesn't want to in the beginning, Neytiri becomes Jake's teacher, teaching him all the ways of the Na'vi. She teaches him their language, their customs, their beliefs, how to hunt, and eventually, he knows enough that he can join the clan as one of their own thanks to her. 2. She's sensitive. When Neytiri kills the Viper Wolves attacking Jake, he tries to thank her, but she snaps at him and tells him not to.
Wait, I just want to say thanks for killing those things. Ah! Damn!
Don't thank. You don't thank for this. This is sad. Very sad only.
Because she grew up worshipping Awa and the Na'vi's connection to all other living things, she cares a lot about Home Tree and about all of the living things inside of it.
I'm trying to understand this deep connection that people have to the forest. She talks about a network of energy that flows through all living things.
3. She's dependable. Neytiri is absolutely dependable. She's the future Sahik, or spiritual leader of the clan, which means she has to show up and do her part day in and day out. Surprise! She has the negative traits too. I bet you couldn't guess that by now. I bet that's quite the twist. 1. She's self-forgetting. Neytiri is more than willing to sacrifice herself in battle to save Home Tree and her clan, which sounds noble, and it is. But the whole falling on my sword to save other people thing can become problematic real quick for the Caregiver. 2. She gets exploited. Jake lies to Neytiri throughout the whole movie, and even though this isn't Neytiri's fault, she did choose to trust and vouch for an avatar, someone who wasn't native Na'vi. She chose to believe the spirit of Awa when it told her Jake was good, and that led to an attack from the humans on Home Tree. 3. She struggles to stand up for, or even vouch for, kindly and calmly, herself. Even when she's literally in love with Jake, okay? Neytiri gives him a list of other women who would be good mates for him. It's only after Jake says he's already chosen Neytiri that she admits she's in love with him too. Why is Neytiri this way? She was assigned the role of the next Sahik at birth, so she's been regarded as the future spiritual caregiver of the clan since she was a child. Naturally, she's going to be a protective caregiver if she's getting ready to be the next Sahik. As her arc progresses, Neytiri learns to prioritize herself too, and she learns to be gentler with her care.
Nari.
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 Jake requires a lot of patience and eventually forgiveness, and teaching and caring for him forces Neytiri to grow beyond who she was at the start of the movie. The shadow. The caregiver's shadow is often called the slave, but I changed the name for this shadow archetype too. Slave could work if you're thinking of the shadow side as being more spineless and passive, like someone who just can't set boundaries. But that's not a villain. That's just a person. Villainous shadow archetypes accomplish the opposite of whatever the actual archetype wants to accomplish. So since the caregiver wants to take care of people, the shadow archetype is going to want to hurt people, which Maleficent wants to do. In the Tormentor, the caregiver's nurturing, sensitive nature becomes vicious. And where the caregiver can't stand up for themselves, the Tormentor will protect themselves ruthlessly. Here's how Maleficent fits into this archetype. 1. She's vicious and callous. As everyone knows, Maleficent curses King Stefan's baby, Aurora, to prick her finger and fall into an eternal sleep on her 16th birthday. When Stefan begs for mercy, Maleficent adds an addendum. Aurora will only wake to true love's kiss. But because of Stefan's betrayal, which we'll get to later, she doesn't actually believe that true love's kiss exists. So she's basically dooming Aurora, an infant, a brand new infant, to death. 2. She's dependable. Yes, Maleficent is just as dependable as Neytiri, but in a different way. Just like you can depend on the caregiver to show up and help you and take care of you, you can depend on the Tormentor to hurt you. Everyone knows Maleficent is brutal and they fear her for it.
Well, well. I must say, I really felt quite distressed at not receiving an invitation.
You're not welcome here.
Oh dear. What an awkward situation.
3. She forgets herself. Stay with me. Where the caregiver forgets themselves to take care of others, the Tormentor forgets their true self in favor of torturing others. Maleficent isn't an evil abuser at heart, okay? She began as the loving protector of the Moors. But in her grief and her anger, she's forgotten her true self and buried it under layers of rage and resentment. 4. She stands up for herself ruthlessly. Maleficent's kindness got her betrayed, so now she's the opposite of kind. She scares people off. Those around her are too afraid to ever try and hurt her. So where the caregiver struggles to stand up for themselves because they believe caring about themselves is selfish, the Tormentor defends themselves with intense brutality because they've learned that any kindness they show will be taken advantage of. Ugh, I love Maleficent's arc in the new movies with Angelina Jolie. She starts good, she falls to evil, she rises to good again. It's all so well done. And her backstory is a crucial part of why people love her, even though she is a villain. Get ready. Maleficent used to be the strongest fairy and a selfless and caring protector of the Moors. She fell in love with a human named Stefan, but he gradually stopped visiting her, until years later when he came back to the Moors. He and Maleficent spent time together like they used to, but she didn't know that he was now a servant of the king, who Maleficent had made enemies with because she protected the Moors from him. Stefan gave Maleficent a drugged drink to make her sleep, and in the morning she woke to find that her strong, glorious wings had been cut off. All she wanted was to protect the Moors, and she even protected Stefan when they first met, and what she got in return was betrayal. Stefan ruined Maleficent's life as she knew it. He took her wings, which she loved, just so he could have the human throne. Caring for and protecting others got her so hurt that she no longer does that. Instead, she does the opposite. She hurts people so they won't dare to hurt her. As I mentioned earlier, Maleficent has a beautifully crafted redemption arc that restores some of the kind, loving caregiverness that she lost to that betrayal. At the beginning of the story, Maleficent doesn't like Aurora. Maybe because she reminds her of Stefan, or maybe because Aurora is innocent and vulnerable like Maleficent once was. Over the years, Maleficent slowly warms up to Aurora bit by bit, and by the time Aurora is 15, Maleficent allows her to come into the Moors. At the end of the movie, when Philip's kiss fails to wake Sleeping Beauty from her sleep, Maleficent apologizes to Aurora, grieving the loss that came from her own curse.
What I've done to you is unforgivable. I was so lost in hatred and revenge. Sweet Aurora, you stole what was left of my heart, and now I've lost you forever.
So by now, she's already changed a lot. She kisses Aurora on the forehead to say goodbye, and when Aurora wakes up, Maleficent realizes that true love's kiss does exist and that true love doesn't have to be romantic. Maleficent loves Aurora, and she lifted the curse from Aurora herself. Let's talk about Parks and Rec, people. Now we're at the ruler, an archetype who wants power and control and fears being overpowered or overthrown. They're authoritative, traditional, and responsible, and they can also be paranoid, rash, and defensive. If you've been thinking about which Parks and Rec character fits this archetype, and you said Leslie Knope, congrats, you guessed it. Leslie Knope is a ruler through and through. 1. she's authoritative. Leslie Knope works in a position of power and often expects that other people will respect her and listen to her simply because she's in that position of power. And they often do, because she's a great leader. 2, she's really traditional. Really traditional. Leslie Knope very much respects the way things have always been in Pawnee. For example, she goes to huge lengths to try and keep Jessica Wicks from tearing down the old gazebo.
I have no other choice, okay? This is the only rational way I know to prevent this tragedy. Oh my God, here they come! Tom, throw away the key! Seriously? Yes, throw it!
She always tries to navigate through the government's red tape around what she wants to do, and she likes old traditions. For example, the Ted Law. 3, she's responsible. Leslie is known for being a workaholic who gets stuff done. That's her entire character, almost. That's her brand.
You're not supposed to be here. You're suspended.
I totally understand that. I'm just going to take my flash drive and I'll do some work from home.
And? Oh, you're specifically prohibited from doing your job.
Oh, I'm not going to do my job. I'm just going to oversee the department and check in on the parks and attend any meetings that are required of the deputy director.
Leslie, go home and give me the flash drive. Okay, good. Now, in 2 weeks, Leslie, no! I am much faster than you!
Ron is always passing work he doesn't want to do to her because he knows she'll do it. She's responsible to the point of freaking out when she literally can't fulfill her responsibilities, like when she's nervous during the campout after the Harvest Festival, trying to come up with a new idea.
I peaked at the Harvest Festival, Ron. Years from now, people are going to say, remember that woman who came up with the Harvest Festival idea and never came up with another idea again? What happened to her? What was her name? Kim? Anyway, who cares? She's stupid and she's dead now.
How does she fit the negative traits? 1, she can definitely be paranoid. When Leslie... I can't even talk about this scene, it's so hilarious. Okay. When Leslie opens the gift basket that was over $25 in order to keep partying with the boys club, she spends the next day apologizing profusely and worried that she's going to lose her job.
Last night, in a foolish attempt to infiltrate a boys club, I violated the government employee ethics code of the state of Indiana. I realize I have let down every female public official in America, and I would like to apologize to them right now, individually and in alphabetical order. Since we last spoke, I have taken extraordinary steps to make further amends for the mistakes that I've made. Good evening. I've spoken to you a couple times about something that happened, but I don't want to talk about it anymore.
2, she's rash. I mean, just look at how she treats Greg Pakaitis.
Pakaitis!
Nope! What is your problem?
Look, I've been very civil, but I will waterboard you.
Did he deserve it? Yes. Was it also rash in a very ruler-esque way? Yes. 3, she's defensive. When Leslie gets in fights, she stands her ground and defends herself, sometimes even long after she realizes she's wrong. Leslie grew up with a mother who was also in government, and her dad died when she was young. Her only example in life was her mom, who's likely a ruler herself, albeit a pretty unhealthy one. Because of this, Leslie learned to prioritize the power and control the ruler seeks in life, but due to her good-hearted nature, she wants to use it for good, like building amazing parks. Throughout the series, Leslie learns how to steamroll less and let others control more. A huge theme throughout the later seasons is Leslie having to learn how to delegate, because as she advances in her job, she has to start loosening her grip on everything. In the end, Leslie is a much less controlling and domineering character. Not that controlling and domineering are bad, but it's good to balance them with being relaxed and calm and laid back. By the time the final episode rolls around, Leslie is much more balanced. Okay, now we take a hard left to the Hunger Games. The ruler's shadow archetype is called the Tyrant. Can you guess why? They have a lot of the same traits, but a big one changes. Rather than being authoritative, the Tyrant becomes authoritarian. They believe they are the only one who's right, and they will stomp on anyone who disagrees with them. And no other character demonstrates this better than President Snow from the Hunger Games. Let's talk about why. 1. He's authoritarian. As I said before, the ruler's authoritative way of getting things done becomes authoritarian in the Tyrant. For the shadow archetype, it's less about approaching things directly and more about squashing them. And like any other ruthless dictator, President Snow does this very well. A great example are his peacemakers, which, despite their name, bring anything but peace. Snow uses the peacemakers to scare the citizens of Panem into submission, whether it's through public beatings, public killings, or just their quiet, terrifying presence. 2. He's traditional. President Snow honors many traditions, the biggest one being, obviously, The Hunger Games. He uses these traditions to keep those in power and to push those without power down even further. These traditions are a reminder of how much control he truly does have. 3. He's paranoid. To be fair, Snow isn't exactly paranoid because Katniss is against him. There is a revolution happening. But when he detects that someone might usurp him, he becomes extremely scared and reactive, even going so far as to poison his friends when they got too powerful. 4. He's rash. The longer the series goes on, the more rash President Snow becomes. Desperate to stop Katniss from taking his power, he resorts to more and more intense methods of stopping her.
People viewed your little trick with the berries as an act of defiance. And if a girl from District 12, of all places, can defy the Capitol and walk away unharmed, what is to prevent, say, an uprising? You should imagine thousands upon thousands of your people dead. This town of yours reduced to ashes. Imagine it gone.
5. He's defensive. Snow's main defense? You guessed it, murder. Whenever he detects a threat, the first thing he jumps to is killing, or at least hurting, those who try and go against him. In fact, he holds the threat of hurting the people Katniss loves over her head for a long time to maintain his control over her, to make sure she does his bidding.
What do I need to do?
When you and Peter are on tour, you need to smile. You need to be grateful. But above all, you need to be madly prepared to end it all in love. You think you can manage that?
Yes.
Yes, what?
I'll convince them.
No. Convince me.
What in Snow's past made him this way? Suffice it to say, he has learned throughout his life that power gets him where he wants. Threatening people gets him what he wants. Hurting people gets him what he wants. The Hunger Games get him what he wants. They all get him complete, unwavering control of Panem. Like I mentioned earlier, President Snow has a pretty catastrophic negative arc. As Katniss continues to succeed in fighting him and Panem begins to see her as a beacon of hope, Snow becomes more and more frenzied in his attempts to stop her. He becomes more willing to hurt people, if that was even possible. President Snow tries everything he can to destroy Katniss, and eventually he ends up destroying himself instead. Last one, number 12, the Creator. We are almost done with this monster of a video. The Creator wants to create, crazy, right? And they fear mediocrity and failure. They're imaginative, expressive, and highly individualistic, but they can also be perfectionistic, dramatic, and they can become paralyzed in the face of failure. For this archetype, I picked a unique example that won't necessarily fit all Creator characters, and I questioned doing this character just because of that, because it's not, you'll see what I'm talking about. But I decided that she really does illustrate Creator and Destroyer stuff really, really well. So I picked Fiti from Moana, who falls into the shadow archetype of the Destroyer when Maui steals her heart and she becomes Te Ka. The reason Fiti is a unique character that might not be the best example to use, but I'm going to do it anyway, is because she had her heart stolen. So not every destroyer is going to be this way. They're not all going to be so ruthless and intense and volcanic because they still have a heart, right? But Fiti fits the Creator archetype perfectly, and Te Ka fits the Destroyer archetype just not so perfectly. Let's get into it. Creators are imaginative, expressive, and highly individualistic, and you can see all of these in the way that Fiti creates. Just look at the life that comes from her fingertips. The unhealthy traits of the Creator, perfectionistic, dramatic, paralyzed in the face of failure, might apply to an unhealthy Creator or even just a human Creator, but I don't think Fiti can be unhealthy because she's a goddess. And since the shadow archetype is all about flipping the original one on its head, let's talk about how Te Ka fits the Destroyer. Rather than being imaginative, the Destroyer becomes destructive. When Fiti's heart is stolen and she becomes Te Ka, she's nothing but destructive. She is the source of the darkness that's killing plants and, as Moana's grandmother puts it, poisoning the island. As the Destroyer, Te Ka destroys everything she previously created. The Destroyer is also expressive and dramatic like the Creator, and these two traits can be seen in the way Te Ka handles herself. She's extremely angry, she's fiery, she's volcanic, she's dangerous. What in Te Ka's past made her this way? When Fiti's heart was stolen, her ability to create went with it. And in the wake of being unable to create, she had nothing else to turn to but destruction. When the Creator is truly backed into a wall and there's no way to build or create, then their angry, brutal side will start to show. Fiti falls into the darkness, grief, and anger of Te Ka when Maui steals her heart. Without it, she can't create, so she begins to destroy instead. However, when Moana gives Te Fiti's heart back to her, her true self is restored. We get to see her bring life back to the world around her just like she used to. In their darkest times, just like pretty much any other archetype, the creator will lose who they truly are and what they truly care about, their creations, in favor of destroying what others care about or maybe even what they themselves value. When the destroyer heals back to the creator, they rediscover their creative, life-giving side and become who they were truly meant to be once again. So that's it! All 12 types! We did it! We lived. We got through 24 characters. Okay. If you made it this far, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. I hope this overview of good and evil characters in all archetypes helps you to see how you can use these to develop your characters and elevate your stories. Don't forget to use each archetype's fear or fears against them and to put their flaws in their way. The flaws are great stumbling blocks for these characters, and using those things will make an amazing story. Thank you so much again for watching. I will see you in a couple of weeks. Happy trails.